West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est long, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire.
Let's bring into this conversation NBC's Pentagon correspondent Courtney Kube with more on the news that everyone is digesting, everyone on Twitter, not those of us staring into a camera, learning about a number of Trump loyalists and folks that are very well known probably to frequent viewers of Fox News. Former Devin Nunes staffer Kash Patel taking on a powerful position. Anthony Tata, who I think Claire referred to earlier, taking on an important position. And an individual who used to work for Mike Flynn, Ezra Cohen Watnick, taking on jobs. What do all these people have in common, and why are they being installed after Trump's defeat?
So one thing they all have in common is that they are loyal to President Trump and they are loyal to the administration. I think that the big question that everyone is trying to figure out right now is exactly why are they being installed there? Is there some common thread, some policy, or something that they all have an agenda on that they could be bringing, the administration could be bringing them into the Pentagon so that they can push some agenda item or items in the last 70 days of this administration. It's not really clear on what that is right now. You mentioned that these individuals are coming in, but we're also seeing the departure of James Anderson, who was the Undersecretary of Defense, acting Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, and of Joe Kernan, retired Navy SEAL, well respected in the intelligence community, who was Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence. And they're being replaced by these Trump loyalists. So this just raises the alarm bells to another level from where it was yesterday at the Pentagon. After the surprise tweet that Secretary Esper was being terminated immediately, which again, Nicole, that was a surprise, both to Secretary Esper and to the senior leaders in the Pentagon. They were not expecting it. Then Secretary Esper himself only found out right before the president tweeted it. But after that surprise tweet, there was a sense of, okay, what's next? What else could be disrupted? And I think that what we've seen today in these personnel changes is the beginning of that move. And again, the big question is there going to be some attempt here to use these Trump loyalists to push through policy items and agendas that they have not been able to do during the 3.5 years of the Trump administration so far?
Well, could it be not something proactive, but something protective? I mean, could it be that he is setting up a constitutional crisis? He had the Secretary of State from the State Department podium today say he's preparing for a second Trump term. I mean, what else could the Pentagon do for a president who refuses to accept the results of an election?
It could have something to do with that. I mean, where my head is going with it on this right now is other more DOD and national security related items that perhaps people who were still at the Pentagon after Secretary Esper left, they would push back on. Someone like General Milley, even the Deputy Secretary of Defense, David Norquist, things that they might push back on that we know that they have throughout their time here, have given guidance against the president's wishes, including pulling all troops out of Afghanistan. We know President Trump tweeted only a couple weeks ago he wants them all out by Christmas. Is that an agenda item that they'd want to push through? We've seen, we know that Kash Patel met with Assad not long ago in Syria. Is there some Syria agenda item here? Does it even potentially have something to do with the border? And again, another common thread here is Iran. We know that these are individuals who have very strong feelings about the Iranian regime. Is there something that would happen here? The other question, I mean, we have a lot of question marks tonight about what could potentially happen here. And another one is, candidly, is Chris Miller, who took over as the acting Secretary of Defense just yesterday. He has a long career in special operations and special forces. I spoke with a number of people who know him well, who served with him in the military over the last 24 hours or so, and he's well respected. But the big question is he someone who would forcefully push back on President Trump, and potentially these new individuals who've come into the Pentagon, who are coming into the Pentagon, would he push back if they are trying to make radical changes in these last 70 days? Yesterday, after the Secretary Esper was terminated, defense officials assured me that, in fact, Miller had addressed senior staff already and said, look, I'm not planning any wide-scale, large changes. We're going to keep the mission going. We're going to keep the trains running as they have been. But now, with all these other potential influencers there working in the Pentagon, could that change?
It is Wednesday, the 11th of November of 2020, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English Bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef. And our daily special is Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Today would be a good day for Donald Trump to concede. Well, it looks like they're trying to pull a coup, and I know we have to argue about whether it's really a coup because the military has to be involved. Well, it looks like, as we explained at the top there, not completely. I think Nicole Wallace was touching upon it quite a bit. These diehard Trump extremists, these loyalists, Vichy collaborators that he's embedded in the Pentagon, decapitated the civilian leadership at the Pentagon, by the way. What are they capable of? Now, the military can only follow a lawful order. But isn't the libertarian dream to determine what is lawful after the fact? Because you could just go to court. Well, how about making it lawful and following the law so you don't have to go to court? That's my argument with libertarians. Why wait until we have to go to court? All right. Well, if we try to adjudicate it in a court, we're going to get Frieslander, and you don't know who Frieslander is? Well, he was the original judge of the original People's Court. And I'm not talking about some TV production. I'm talking about the Nazi People's Court. Yeah, that was a Hitler loyalist. Very extreme, by the way. And now, here we are. The State Department says, we're looking for a peaceful transition to a second Trump administration. Oh, I know. Pompeo walked that back, sort of. They always say, after they've been caught, oh, I was just joking. Uh-huh. We know what you're trying to do, Mike. And we know what your little lady's trying to do, too, you corrupt. Oh, God, this whole administration, I would say that maybe we would have to color the whole Republican Party, every member, as being utterly corrupt and craven. Every single one. But anyway, are we in a constitutional crisis? I guess not yet. Even though the transition is not happening. This administration lost in the most historic fashion for the whole world to see. And yet, they claim it's fake. I just had to put up with all this BS in 2016. Oh, Russia, Russia, Russia. You say it's only about Russia, Russia, Russia. You commie. Trump won. Shut up. That's what I got the whole time. You couldn't talk about just the politics of the thing, that Hillary had a mandate because she won the popular vote. That is just, that's, the sky is blue. When you pour water, it tends to go down rather than up, down. It's just an immutable fact. And yet, I had to shut up because he won the Electoral College, and that doesn't matter about, hey, he won. Well, you know what? Joe Biden won. Get the F out. But no, the Trumpers in my neighborhood are flying more Trump flags now. They're revving their giant trucks even more loudly. But it's Antifa. No wonder. Centrist Democrats going to vote were called Antifa. Criminalize those people. Make heroic the dapper Nazis. And it convinced 70 million people. Not a small number. Not half, by any means. So stop saying we have to listen to what the other half is. Which reminds me, why do we have to make nice with any of them? Look what they're doing. Reach across the aisle so they can stab you in your heart? Get close enough so I can stab you. While holding your hand and pulling you even closer. Here, let me twist it now. There is an oath that one takes to the Constitution of the United States. Not an oath to an individual. Donald Trump has gotten rid of those people who took an oath to America, the Constitution. They are considered to be the deep state. What a turnabout phrase that is. Deep state. Please. What he's talking about is just regular civil servants and the whole machinations of how our country works. And how do you destroy it? The same way Vlad did. This is the Vladian playbook. Why won't anybody talk about that? Well, I am. But I guess I'm your crazy uncle at the end of the bar now, huh? I'm still batting 1,000, I gotta say. Still batting 1,000. This is the Vladian playbook and is being played out. Even to what's happening with the courts. That's the most obvious, of course. I know that began way before Vlad. But it's still part of the Vladian playbook because Vlad used it. He might have even looked to America like Hitler looked to America for eugenics. Yeah. Vlad might have looked to America about how to pack the courts, change it from within, so that beyond all common sense and the law, the laws are changed so Vlad could continue to rule term after term after term after term, and Trump wants that too. And he's an old guy. Vlad started this in his 40s. So, but we have the Trump kids who are claiming they're going to take over the Republican Party. Can you do that from jail? Or are we just going to let them go? Let bygones be bygones so they can come and stab us in the back again. We better start playing a little bit more rough. These aren't kids. They're full-blown Michael, Fredo, and Connie. Let's be clear about that. Where's Sonny? I don't know. I'm thinking Sonny might turn out to be Barron if we're not careful. I know we're not supposed to go after the kid, but Barron scares me. He looks a little too much like the character in The Omen. Look it up. What's on the rest of the menu here? In the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Well, destroying federal documents during a presidential transition is a federal crime, and you know they're doing it because they're covering up their involvement with Russia. What else could it be? Well, I have some ideas about what else it could be, and it could be quite a bit, including Russia. Kelly Loeffler blasted Georgian Democratic opponent Reverend Warnock's small dollar California campaign donations from liberal elites, while at the same time she pocketed a couple $100,000 from wealthy California special interests. Yeah, small dollar donors are the elite, the liberal elite. God. And they're going to change Georgia so terribly while she's taking money from rich special interests from California. And North Dakota Governor Kristi Noem has her grift on just in time for Christmas. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where Germany seeks a new deal with the United States under a Biden administration. Well, and Hong Kong disqualified 4 pro-democracy legislators for being threats to national security. I think Trump wants to do that here, too. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. At netrootsradio.com. To the rightish of the page is our chat room link, monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the leftish of that chat room link that is really near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will then find the link to our Patreon page. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, your Patreonage allows us to fulfill our civic duty. And what is that civic duty? Well, Resistance Radio, as the founders originally intended. We are able to take your patronage, and how about sending the cost of an espresso-type coffee drink to us once a month? We are quantum mechanics in the way that we stretch these dollars. We leave no filament unstretched. On the subatomic level, too, we're that good. So we pay our bills, fly under the radar, and continue doing what we're doing. So far. I should mention I did get a notice from Facebook that indeed my sarcasm is considered hate speech, because I guess I was being sarcastic about Trump being a loser, holding on to white power. I mentioned white power, and apparently that's hate speech, or repeating the pejoratives that they have for black and brown people. If you repeat what the president of the United States says, you'll be suspended from Facebook for hate speech. And I don't mean repeating it as an affirmative. I mean repeating it as sarcasm and showing it to be the foolish bizarreness that it is. But that will get you suspended. And the Trump maggots on Facebook that actually make physical threats of violence for the whole world to see are still there, even though Facebook says, oh yeah, we're getting rid of them, don't worry. Really? Like before? Okay, so we got that out of the way. Oh, I also want to mention very quickly, my mother did take a tumble last week. She's somewhat on the mend. I was a bit concerned, as well as my sister, that she might have gotten a touch of pneumonia. Had a relatively high fever for her. She tends to run a little cooler, so when she gets a fever, it might not seem like much to you and I, but it is to her. Anyway, she seems to be doing better on that front. Because she had been hacking up this weird phlegm, they don't want her to come into the office, and I don't blame them. So we're going to set up another video conference here with her primary caregiver, or her doctor. They used to call it your family doctor back in the day. So we'll go from there. But she seems to be doing a tad better, and it is frightening because she's not a young woman anymore at 83, and these falls can have a devastating effect, and we don't want her falling anymore. So I guess she's finally gotten the clue. There's the walker. How about using it? So I think I might be the same way. I mean, I am. I don't want to acknowledge that I'm decaying. Who does? Okay. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, it is so simple because Tom made it simple. You just go to @NetrootsRadio. Thanks, Tom. Follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam because I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's about 10 minutes before showtime, and then I get that linked up on social media. Used to on Facebook. I'll have to wait another month, but we'll see. We might have a workaround for that. And on other social media platforms for your social media platform pleasure. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West and pick up podcasts. And this is the most important. Do please pick up the podcasts of the show on Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. Oh, man, I still got to get on Audible and Amazon. I keep forgetting. All these things that keep coming up between the pandemic, taking care of Mom, battening down the hatches because we got winter coming on. Jeez, and we're already in a pandemic. So I'll get us on Audible and Amazon right quick. All right, this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is out of, well, Just Security by that man, Richard Painter. You know that man. So, you are a political appointee or a career civil servant, and it appears that the Trump team will be leaving the White House while the new team is moving in to assume control of the executive branch on January 20th. What can you destroy, and what can you take with you? The answer to part one of this question is probably nothing, and the answer to part two is exceedingly little. That is, unless you want to hire a defense attorney and risk a serious term of imprisonment. Well, you would hope. Things have changed now, Richard. Anyway, presidential records and federal records belong to the United States government. Only personal records can be taken and retained after leaving government service. Under the Presidential Records Act, affectionately known as the PRA, these are materials relating exclusively to the president's own election and to the election of a particular individual or individuals to federal, state, or local office that have no relation to or direct effect upon the carrying out of constitutional, statutory, or other official or ceremonial duties of the president, and materials relating to private political associations. And this is all part of 44 U.S.C. 2201. Calendars that contain official appointments and other records containing both official and political material are the property of the government and must be retained. Richard, Trump is the government. He's taking them with him. It is important to understand special rules that apply under the PRA to most of the executive office of the president, affectionately known as the EOP, including the White House office, office of the vice president, the entire National Security Council staff, and other EOP components. Under the PRA, a small category of materials in your office could count as personal. The print out of the photo you took with your mom in front of the West Wing during her tour is probably a personal record that can come with you in your box, along with your coffee mug. But everything related to doing your job, in essence, is a presidential record that belongs to the government, no matter what format it is in or how it is stored. Now remember, the unnamed Clinton staffers who thought it funny to steal the W key from the White House computer boards in 2001? Not so funny when one realizes that juvenile prank was a federal crime. the theft of or willful damage to government property would constitute a criminal act, the Nonpartisan General Accounting Office report stated after an investigation that included interviewing over 100 government employees, and that was just for defacing the W. But let's assume that departing executive branch staffers destroy or steal something far more valuable than a computer key worth less than $1. Let's assume they steal or destroy information belonging to the United States government stored on computer files in the executive branch. We're way past her emails now, aren't we? A document that is embarrassing, potentially incriminating, or just useful to the other side, which a staffer simply takes or destroys, so the other side won't get it. The other side, let's remember, is fellow Americans who may disagree politically, but who, once a new president is sworn in pursuant to the Constitution, will administer the executive branch under the powers of the president set forth in Article 2. Trump doesn't get to take his Article 2 with him. Okay? The stolen or destroyed property belongs to the government. That means we the people, not Trump, even though he thinks he's the government, because it's always the royal we with he. Intentionally taking or destroying that property, including property in the form of digital information, is a federal crime. Now, this has become such a concern that the Democrats have proposed a bill to stop the current destruction of records in the White House. Josh Israel of the American Independent brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Republican Senator Kelly Loeffler slammed the Reverend Raphael Warnock, her Democratic opponent in the race for her Georgia U.S. Senate seat, for raising money from California donors ahead of the upcoming January runoff in the race. But Loeffler has already raised almost $150,000 from California donors during the 2020 campaign. While that Reverend Warnock courts California liberal elites in Silicon Valley to flip Georgia for the radical left, we're counting on everyday Americans to fuel our efforts, she tweeted, along with a link to a right-wing news site that reports Warnock was set to participate in a fundraising event with Silicon Valley donors. Oh, my God. The tweet included a request that supporters chip into her own coffers. Loeffler, most likely the wealthiest member of the Senate, has poured more than $23 million of her own fortune into the campaign since she was appointed in December to the Senate seat left vacant by the retirement of Republican Johnny Isakson. But rather than simply accepting donations from everyday Americans, she accepted money from wealthy special interests and donors from California. Well, I would argue that that's who she thinks are everyday Americans. According to the Nonpartisan Center for Responsible Politics, Loeffler has taken in almost $147,000 already this year from contributors in the Golden State. More than a third of her itemized donations have come from outside of Georgia. Now, I would think to capitalize on her insider trading expertise, the Daily Beast reported in June that Loeffler was offering benefit levels labeled investors, shareholders, and board members to donors to her campaign. I would think there's a secret designation that is really known as insider traders, the ones that donate a lot of money that no one wants to know about. A fundraising brochure promised those who gave and raised large sums of money for her campaign would receive invitations to quarterly breakfasts and other events. She also hosted a $2,800 a head fundraising retreat on September 11th at a private beach and golf course on Sea Island, Georgia. Now, why would she do that on September 11th? Is it a celebration? Worker bees at the Associated Press, by way of the American Independent, bring us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem has enthusiastically taken up Trump's efforts to contest the results of the presidential election, asking for online donations to, quote, help us bring it home for the president, end quote. But it appears the donations are set to flow into her own re-election account. The Republican governor, a close Trump ally, launched a fundraising campaign soon after the election was called for Democratic nominee Joe Biden on Saturday. The website soliciting donations has Kristi Noem for governor in large letters at the top, but below that, the message is all about Trump, saying that he needs our support while the far-left Dems declare a victory for Biden before all the votes are counted. It urges donors to please help us bring it home for the president. The site allows contributors to check the amount of their donation and includes a box to cover a processing fee, so, quote, 100% of my donation goes to Kristi for governor, end quote. Noem, who was first elected in 2018 and would be up for election in 2022, did not respond to a request for comment on how the money raised would be used. Her campaign committee chairman, Steve Kirby, said he had no comment on how the funds would be used. It's unlikely that much of any of the money will end up going to Trump, said Paul S. Ryan, the Vice President of Policy and Litigation at Common Cause, a campaign finance watchdog. Ryan, a campaign finance lawyer, pointed out that the governor can only give a maximum of $2,800 to Trump's campaign under federal law. If she wanted more to flow to Trump, she would have directed donors to Trump's own donation site. In all likelihood, she is keeping the money that she is raising, Ryan said. If she were actually interested in raising money for Donald Trump's own legal efforts, she would use a joint fundraising committee. Well. Grifters gotta grift. That brings us to our break, and we better take our break. And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, Make Glorious Review benefit moviegoers. Though Sacha Baron Cohen had announced the retirement of the Borat character in 2007 after the first movie, rumors began surfacing after Cohen was spotted in the disguise last year and observed filming something last spring. Given that and, say, one or two comedic opportunities being present, Amazon Studios announced the new Borat subsequent movie film in September. As you might recall, the nation of Kazakhstan was less than thrilled about its portrayal in the first Borat, and that fact serves to launch this one as the Kazakh journalist is released from prison for humiliating the country for a mission to the U.S. to present a gift to Donald Trump and restore the country's honor. Arriving in Texas, the mission mutates from giving Trump a monkey to presenting Mike Pence with his daughter Tutar, played by the Bulgarian actress Maria Bakalova in her breakout English language role. Her character in many ways reprises that of the wonderful and hairy Asimov in the first movie. Hijinks ensue as the pair, separately or together, experience America, including a coming-out party for Tutar, a visit to the CPAC convention, a synagogue full of Holocaust survivors, a state fair where Cohen is a country singer, and a rural cabin full of animal heads and QAnon folks. Then, of course, there's the Rudy Giuliani scene, and no spoilers here, but the pandemic is explained too. Humor as political commentary is about as old as humor itself, or political commentary itself, and Borat, subsequent movie film, is as good as it gets. And while we all wish Cohen the best in the future, as Trump moves into our rear view, we should hope the future will present a less target-rich environment. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at take2moviereview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60 Seconds Science. I'm Mark Stratton.
Everyone loves zebras. No doubt it's the natty stripes. But recent research into why the stripes exist indicates that the markings may be something of a mixed blessing for the zebras that wear them. New research adds to evidence against old ideas that somehow stripes cool them down or confuse predators such as lions. Confusing lions would be nice for them. But the good news is that a group of researchers have additional evidence in support of a hypothesis they proposed in 2014. Stripes seem to confuse biting flies, causing them to overfly or crash into the zebras. The study is in the journal Proceedings of the Royal Society B. Various ideas have been tossed around in the last 150 years about the African equid's stripes.
This debate goes right back to the birth of evolution, with Darwin and Wallace exchanging letters on the subject.
Martin Howe, a biologist who studies animal vision at the University of Bristol and lead author of the study. Howe and his colleagues sought a mechanism for how stripes cause insect confusion. They began with domestic horses in Great Britain. They covered the horses with rugs featuring an array of designs from single-colour black or grey to check patterns, and, of course, zebra stripes. The researchers then recorded videos of horseflies trying to get at the horses.
When we looked in detail at what these zebra stripes were doing to horseflies as they were coming into land, we found that horseflies were flying much faster as they came to land on striped patterns than they were when they were landing on grey or black.
Faster and more erratically. The flies made successful landings much less frequently on the horses in stripes than on the solids. But there's more.
And interestingly, we also, in our recent work, found that this also applies to checked patterns. So it seems that there's something about black and white patterns that's really confusing these flies.
One assumption was the stripes affect the fly's optic flow via a process known as the aperture effect. That effect creates a visual illusion akin to a barber shop's pole, inducing distortion and causing flies to misjudge landings upon striped surfaces. But crediting the aperture effect's ability to discombobulate biting flies appears to be flawed, because the researchers found that checked surfaces were just as effective at repelling flies as were stripes.
Once we'd lost the aperture effect as a possible explanation for how zebra stripes affect fly behaviour, we then had to turn to other suggestions. So there might be some other kind of illusion that is happening in the eyes of these flies. And it could also be that the stripes are disrupting the search pattern that these flies need to try and find a host. So we're undertaking more experiments now to try and find out which of those is the case.
Whatever the result, evolution had a good reason to make zebras, a horse of a different colour.
Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60 Second Science, I'm Mark Stratton.
This is a message from CDC.
After hurricanes, tornadoes, and floods, standing water and excess moisture help mold grow in your home, garage, and other structures. When you return to a home that has been flooded, know that you're likely to have mold. Mold puts your family's health at risk. If you have mold growing in your home, you should clean it up and fix other water problems, such as leaks in roofs, walls, or plumbing. Keep your children and pets out of affected areas until you've cleaned. Control moisture in your home to prevent mold growth. To remove mold growth from hard surfaces, use commercial products, soap and water, or a bleach solution of no more than 1 cup of household laundry bleach in 1 gallon of water. Follow the manufacturer's instructions. Never mix bleach with ammonia or other household cleaners. It will produce dangerous, toxic fumes. Open windows and doors to provide fresh air.
For more information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Good grief, cry many progressives. How has America turned so right-wing that a flabby, narcissistic, wannabe dictator like Trump was even in the running? But wait. Aside from a minority of racist, xenophobic, misogynistic voters, plus a bunch of uber-wealthy corporate profiteers making a killing from his rich man's agenda, most of Trump's rank-and-file voters are not right-wingers at all. To see evidence of this, look at the multitude of overtly progressive ballot issues that won majority support on Election Day, even in so-called Trump country. 53% of Arizona voters said yes to a tax surcharge on incomes above $250,000 a year, specifically to raise teacher pay and recruit more teachers. A whopping 78% of Oregon voters approved a populist proposition to put strict controls on the corrupting power of big money corporate donations and elections. 61% of Floridians voted to raise the state's minimum wage to $15 an hour, a working-class advance vehemently opposed by corporate giants and right-wing groups. 57% voted yes on a Colorado provision requiring corporations to let employees earn paid time off for medical and family needs. Between 53 and 69% of voters in 6 states, including in such supposedly conservative bastions as Arizona, Mississippi, and South Dakota, approved initiatives liberalizing and even legalizing marijuana and other drug use. Plus, there were some big symbolic victories, such as Mississippi replacing a Confederate symbol on its state flag with a magnolia blossom. This is Jim Hightower saying, the hope that resides in these progressive policy positions is the prospect that a truly great American majority might yet be forged, not around some mega politician, but around our people's basic values of fairness and justice for all.
Need an antidote to the progressive blues? Want some good news about how grassroots folks are rebelling against the corporate powers and winning? Well, here's an easy-to-swallow pill for you, the Hightower Lowdown. Hightower's monthly newsletter will give you the lowdown, even as it lifts you up. It's 4 pages a month, jam-packed with facts you can use, actions you can take, and Jim's own Texas humor, all for only $15 a year. To become a lowdowner, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1887. That was the day that 4 men were hung in Chicago for their alleged role in the bombing at a labor rally at the city's Haymarket Square a year earlier. 8 men were put on trial. Although the prosecution did not prove any of the men had ties to the bombing, 5 were sentenced to die. Louis Ling died in jail before the execution could take place. The others were martyred for their support of the the labor movement and the fight for the 8-hour day. 3 of those executed were born in Germany. August Spies and Adolf Fischer worked for a Chicago German-language workers' newspaper. George Engel owned a toy store. Backlash against foreign-born anarchists helped stoke public hysteria over Haymarket. The final martyr was Southern-born Albert Parsons, the editor of The Alarm, an English-language workers' paper. The day after they died, the Chicago Tribune reported on the brutality of their execution, writing, quote, "Then begins a scene of horror that freezes the blood. The loosely adjusted nooses remain behind the left ear and do not slip to the back of the neck. Not a single neck is broken, and the horrors of a death by strangulation begin." Thousands of mourners joined the funeral procession of the 5 slain men. In 1893, Governor John Peter Altgeld granted the 3 defendants still in jail a full pardon. The monument to the Haymarket 8 stands at Forest Home Cemetery, just west of Chicago, drawing visitors from across the world to remember these martyrs for the 8-hour movement. May Day is celebrated as the workers' holiday around the world in commemoration of the events in Chicago. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
I just think it's an embarrassment. I know from my discussions with foreign leaders thus far that they are hopeful that the United States democratic institutions are viewed once again as being strong and enduring. It's all going to come to fruition on January 20th.
President-elect Joe Biden on Tuesday vowed to get right to work and dismissed Donald Trump's refusal to concede defeat in last week's election as inconsequential. Trump is making unsubstantiated claims of voter fraud, and the administration is blocking Biden from receiving intelligence briefings and federal funding traditionally provided to incoming presidents. A new Reuters Ipsos poll found that 80% of Americans, including more than half of Republicans, recognize that Biden won the November 3rd election once every media outlet called the race for the former VP. But despite losing the popular vote by more than 4.5 million votes, many Republicans in Congress and in Trump's administration are following his lead. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo on Monday would not acknowledge Biden's victory, even as America's closest allies congratulated the president-elect. Pompeo spoke to the press on Tuesday, and his cavalier and snarky approach exposed what could become a horrible international diplomatic disaster.
There will be a smooth transition to a second Trump administration.
Mike Pompeo, the Secretary of State, actually said that. Pressed on that question, Pompeo made it clear that he didn't believe that the election had yet been settled, but he said the winner will be sworn in January 20th on schedule. The Trump administration is also apparently going all scorched earth at the Defense Department. 4 senior civilian officials have been fired or have resigned since Monday, and they've been replaced with people seen as loyal to Trump. The actions have raised alarms inside the Pentagon, with one defense official calling them dictator moves. Remember this?
COVID. By the way, on November 4th, you won't hear about it anymore. It's true.
Well, not so fast, Mr. Orange Man. The United States passed 1 million new confirmed coronavirus cases in just the first 10 days of November. We've now reported more than 100,000 infections every day for 8 straight days and counting. Hospitalizations from COVID across the country rose to a record high, now hovering around 62,000. The total number of cases nationally is more than 10 million. Countries around the world are also hitting new records. More than 50 million cases of COVID-19 have been recorded globally.
Your ignorance is showing as the death toll keeps on growing. Wear a mask, get your head out of your ass. Try to think of someone other than yourself is all we ask.
A new scientific briefing from the Centers for Disease Control released Tuesday says that wearing masks will save lots of money and many lives. Quote, adopting universal masking policies can help avert future lockdowns, especially if combined with other non-pharmaceutical interventions such as social distancing, hand hygiene, and adequate ventilation. Of course, there are a myriad of reasons to avoid contracting COVID-19, especially here in the United States, where we have an antiquated for-profit health insurance industry that prices much of the population out of the market. And we have a Republican Party still intent on making sure that Americans don't have health insurance coverage. The Supreme Court heard the third challenge to the Affordable Care Act from the Trump administration. But after listening to the hearing, it appears that the court could uphold the law. Surprisingly, Associate Justice Brett Kavanaugh seemed to be saying that striking down the individual mandate shouldn't undo the rest of the law.
Looking at our severability precedents, it does seem fairly clear that the proper remedy would be to sever the mandate provision and leave the rest of the act in place, the provisions regarding pre-existing conditions and the rest. So the question to you, obviously, is how do you get around those precedents on severability, which seem on point here?
And Chief Justice John Roberts, who was the deciding vote to uphold the Affordable Care Act in 2012, also pushed back against an argument by Texas Solicitor General Kyle Hawkins. 18 Republican-led states pushing the court to strike down what's left of the law. The decision from the court is expected in late June. And finally, former Second Lady Jill Biden is set to make history as a First Lady who maintains a paid job outside of the administration. Dr. Biden is expected to focus her official work on education, military families and veterans, and fighting cancer. Vice President-elect Kamala Harris's husband, Doug Emhoff, is a lawyer who took a leave of absence from the DLA Piper law firm in August to campaign for the ticket. On Wednesday, we learned that Mr. Emhoff will sever ties with his law firm to focus on his official duties as the first ever second gentleman of a new administration. And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com. Please click on that donate button.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 40 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting to be a tad warmer than yesterday. Will be around 53 to 55. Cloudy early, becoming mostly sunny this afternoon, winds light and variable. We did have quite a bit of rain last night. Not quite a tenth of an inch, but it's quite a bit anyway, and we are expecting lots and lots of rain starting tomorrow night pretty much. Tomorrow will be clear to partly cloudy. Tonight, will be clear to partly cloudy with lows in the upper 20s. And if we get some rain, that could be turning into snow. Overcast tomorrow around 50 degrees, winds light and variable, and rain will be increasing later in the day, and we are expecting about a half an inch starting tomorrow night. Yikes. Confirmed coronavirus cases in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon have now spiked to 2,435, and it's possible that we go to 2,500 tomorrow. Confirmed cases of deceased are now standing at 8. Pollen is rated as none right here in Rogue River proper. The air quality index for the region is good at 30 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is low at 2. Barometric pressure is falling at 30.19 inches. It is foggy outside, and there's only a half a mile of visibility. And relative humidity is at 100%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 55 and cloudy. Paris is 54 and cloudy. Rome is 65 and sunny. Kyiv is 40 degrees and cloudy. Kabul is 49 and fair. Hong Kong is 66 and clear. Tokyo is 48 and clear. Sydney, Australia is 66 and clear. San Francisco, California is 50 degrees and cloudy. And New York is 68 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Frank Jordan of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The election of Joe Biden as the next U.S. president is an opportunity for a new deal in transatlantic relations that would revive the close cooperation between America and Europe, but also see Europeans shoulder greater responsibility on the world stage, Germany's foreign minister said yesterday, Tuesday. Joe Biden's election victory means one thing in particular: new opportunities for the transatlantic partnership. Foreign Minister from Germany, Heiko Maas, told the AP in an interview, "We need a kind of new deal in the transatlantic partnership, the basis of which would consist of responding to international challenges with international solutions and not with a policy of America or Europe first," he said. Maas, who has been Germany's top diplomat since 2018, said relations with the U.S. over the past 4 years often were one-sided. Decisions were made by the administration or in the White House, and they were then put in front of us, and we had to deal with them, he said. That's not the cooperation we wished for and still wish for. Maas said he hoped the Biden administration would bring the United States back as an active player on the world stage, joining other nations in tackling global challenges such as climate change, migration, and the coronavirus pandemic.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Zen Su of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Hong Kong's pro-democracy lawmakers announced today, Wednesday, they would resign en masse after 4 of them were ousted from the semi-autonomous Chinese territory's legislature in a move one legislator said could sound the death knell for democracy there. The resignation of the 15 remaining pro-democracy lawmakers will ratchet up tensions over the future of Hong Kong. Of course, we know that as a former British colony that has long been a regional financial hub and bastion of Western-style civil liberties, but over which China's government has increasingly tightened its control. A new national security law imposed by Beijing this year has alarmed the international community. The mass departure will also leave Hong Kong's legislature with only pro-Beijing lawmakers who already made up a majority, but can now pass bills favored by Beijing without much opposition. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day. But you do know Netroots Radio will broadcast on, and we're going to meet up tomorrow for Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goer. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.